Thank you, Rabbi Abe, and the family for inviting me to speak. I believe the last time we were together in person was on the boardwalk performing a wedding together about 1 year ago.
Yes, in this area.
We've spoken many, many times since then, and your friendship is very valuable to me, and I really feel humbled and honored at this opportunity to address. Over the past many years, I've been visiting the Hakham in his home in El Baran every summer, and he and Esther always greeted me with tremendous warmth and really undeserved honor, made me feel at home as he patiently answered any question I had, gave me feedback on my research, and every single one of those visits was just so special to me. I feel extremely close to the entire Faur clan because many of the Hacham's grandchildren were my students, going back to Brooklyn College, Yeshiva University, and currently in Bet Knesset and classes in different places. Every single one of his grandchildren, at least the ones I know, are consistently impressive in their commitment to Torah and their knowledge base and their midot. Each one exudes sincerity, humility, and really outgoing kindness. When I speak to them about their grandfather, they shine with pride, as they should, and it's easy to see that the Chacham's example and his teachings are the bedrock upon which they are building their own lives and families. I pray to Borei Olam that he should grant a full measure of consolation and nechama to his wife Esther and each of his children, Hakham Abraham or Mimi and their spouses, and to the grandchildren, great-grandchildren?
Yes.
And great-grandchildren. Really, there is no greater legacy and testament than to the Hakham than this wonderful and impressive family and all of the Torah, leadership, and chesed that they continue to spread. Tenachmu min hashamayim, and I know that you have a treasure trove of memories that will sustain you for many years to come. When I was younger, I really only knew of Hakham Faur indirectly. Mickey Carey used to throw in Divrei Torah while teaching Pizmonim, and he would always quote them in the name of Hakham Faur and talk enthusiastically about his reverence for him. But I began myself reading Hakham Faur's writings when I was in college and graduate school. And I remember opening Golden Doves, and it was unlike reading any other book because every page still feels like a revelation. It's a kind of work that you can apply hafoch ba, tekula ba. Every time I open it and read it, I find something new, a whole world that I didn't see before. Sometimes these chidushim are as simple as just a word translation that you never realized, but opens up everything to it. Still, no one said it before. And I'll just share with you 2 or 3 of my personal favorite examples that come to mind all the time. We read Mishnah Avot. Moshe kibel Torah misinai u'misara liYoshua, v'Yoshua lezekenim. And everybody reads this and we understand. Moshe received the Torah and he handed it over, the physical copy, and he taught him the Torah Sheba'al Peh, repeated it over and over again, and they got it. Well, okay, we understand that, but it could have used a different word, limida. Why misara? And the Hakham doesn't translate this as simply gave it over or repeated, but rather surrendered. What do you mean surrendered? Or entrusted, you could say. That Moshe had the authority, right, to explain the Torah, and he entrusted it. He surrendered that authority to Yoshua, and Yoshua lezekenim. And that now explains so much. When the rabbis come and they explain the Torah, they perform derashot. And they say, who gave them the authority to do that? The answer is, HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave it to Moshe. And he gave that authority to the rabbis in the future and to the Sanhedrin. And in just one translation, he's solved mountains of problems that no one could figure out for generations. Of what does it mean, rabbinic authority? How do the rabbis make the rashot? How does halakha develop? How does Talmudic argumentation work? How does the halachic system that we have, is it so strong? And this is the answer, just in one simple word. Or a second example, the Talmud we know distinguishes between devarim shebichtav, the Torah is written, and devarim sheba'al peh, the Torah as it is read and explained. There's a written text and the vocal performance. The Torah scrolls itself must be written without vocalization, without punctuation. One letter that's off, the Torah is pasul. The written text, however, by itself is not intelligible. The pure prophetic word is beyond our understanding and can have no impact. if it's just left rolled in the ark. Rather, it is only when we perform the Torah, when we vocalize it in public recitation and we practice it in our daily lives, then the Torah becomes realized. And for that reason, Rabbi Yochanan in the Talmud says that the Berit with the Israel was made only on the basis of the vocalized reading of the text. It's based on this that Hakham Faur explains why the word likra means both to summon, right, likra, to come here, and also to read. Okay, we all know it's a homonym, right? But what do the two meanings have in common? And so insightfully he says that likra, to read, actually means to summon, meaning from the written text, right? To explain its signification, to call upon the text, to speak to us as we read it. And you see through his knowledge of multiple languages and philology, he can unpack this philosophical idea and give new meaning to what we do every Monday and Thursday and Shabbat. And I think about this every time we take out the Torah and the Baal Koreh reads it, that we are here recreating Ma'amad Har Sinai and performing and bringing the meaning of the Torah and making it active in our lives. And one last example and quote. Here's one line that I'll read. In the mind of the Hebrews, the universe is represented as the writing or active speech of God. In the mind of the Hebrews, the universe is represented as the writing or active speech of God. It's the kind of sentence I have to read 10, 20 times. What does he mean by that? And if somebody else wrote it, like Rabbi Dweck said, okay, it's a nice poetic thing. But when the Hakham writes it, it's based on layers and layers of tradition, of obscure books and the whole tradition coming from Andalus. And you have to really analyze, what does he mean by that? And you continue to read and he explains. In the West, philosophy stood in hierarchical opposition to rhetoric. Rabbinic tradition is the only intellectual and cultural movement in the world to have continued developing since antiquity without a primeval rupture, an inaugural split, resulting in an endless series of hierarchical opposition. Wow, this is like breathtaking to read such a sentence. What he's saying is that the Torah that we appreciate as ours and we cherish is not only the basis of our lives, which is a tremendous amount, it also has something fundamental to teach the whole world. An idea that was there from the beginning that most of the Western world forgot. They made a split between philosophy and rhetoric, between words and things, between mind and body. And it's only the Jewish tradition, it's only the rabbinic teachings, the only movement to have continued without that split. It's an amazing thing to think about. And so I dedicated a few years to thinking about this sentence and doing my own research into trying to track how he got there, tracking back the readings that he did, tracking back the sources. And that resulted in a book-length work. That's my second book, Rabbis in Classical Rhetoric. I have to say, really, this is my own personal expansion, trying to understand those two lines. And you could do the same thing for, I think, every page of almost all of his writings. And so, but there's still so much more to do. I'll just go back, and the first time I had a conversation with Hakham Faur many years ago, when I was first getting into the rabbinate, and he gave me very important advice. He said, do not become a professional rabbi, be a learned businessman. For better or for worse, I didn't take that advice. However, he also gave me a tremendous amount of personal advice at other critical junctures in my career that were absolutely invaluable. He actually taught me what my name means. Hidary, he knows my grandfather, of course he knows everybody. And he says, what does it mean? And I said, well, I always thought it meant greengrocer, Hidary, green. Maybe my ancestors had a fruit store or something. He says, no, that's not what it means at all. Hidary means fresh and always alive, and is associated with Eliyahu Hanavi. My name is really Eliyahu, and that's why we say every Mosai Shabbat, Juma Chudra, green week, flourishing, and always alive and fresh. And since then, I have a whole new appreciation. He knew more about me than I knew about myself. I'd like to say something in the name of Rabbi Barry, who couldn't be here, but who so valued the Hakham coming to his Bet Knesset in Elbaron, sharing the Torah on Shabbat mornings, giving a long 2-hour class before Mincha every Tisha B'Av, the hardest slot to fill. And he said, even though Rabbi Barry recognized that Chacham Faur was the elder and senior rabbi, he so appreciated how the Chacham would nevertheless defer to Rabbi Barry. He's the rabbi of the synagogue. I can also attest to how nervous I was when I came to Elbaron for the first time to give a class, and Chacham Faur was sitting right next to me. But after the class, he was always so gracious and complimentary, and really that meant the world to me. He was absolutely unique figure. I'll add one thing, that I speak to many people in the world of academia, and they've all read the Chacham's works, whether in the rabbinics or Jewish history, and they have his works have had a huge impact on many fields. I think his work is used more often than is quoted for whatever reason, maybe because its style and range of sources is in many ways ahead of our time and transcends the constraints of the usual divisions of fields of knowledge. But we can see that he took everything in, and he quoted the entire breadth of scholarly literature. But for him, he wrote from the perspective always of Torah Lishma, and he accepted the truth from wherever it came, but ultimately focused it within the context of Kiddusha, Yirat Shamayim, and absolute dedication to Jewish law. He was a figure that comes only once in many years, and I believe we have so much more to mine in the depths of his writings that will take many years and decades to fully unpack his creativity and contribution. I hope that we will all devote ourselves collectively to that effort, and we will continue to learn from his wisdom for many years to come. Yehi zichro baruch.